1490 WERE. 360 Information Network is brought to you by the Cleveland Observer, and it is also brought to you by Larchmere Cultural Arts. We have quite a few activities that are coming up, and I'm going to be giving you some announcements about those items and a couple of other things. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce you to the founder and creator of 360 Info Network, Brother Lynn Hampton, also known as Hamtonio.
Welcome, welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. We are glad that you guys took out the little time to join us. You know, we try to bring you good information that you can use to help you, to empower you, to enhance your life and the community. That's what it's all about. That's what we call it 360. We try to touch all the bases here. You know, also want to remind you again, it is out, on Amazon. The book Conscious Policing. Get a chance, pick it up. There's some good information in there. I think I poured my heart out in it, and over the years of observation and being on the police department, so giving you a perspective from African American officers' point of view, and how I've seen a lot of things, and moving and working in the community as being a police officer, and some of the mentality and the characteristics that tends to come along with that police culture. So it's good, and it takes you down memory lane and gives you a history lesson, and it's for our law enforcement, black and law enforcement officers to take an inside look at themselves and see if they are victims to institutionalized behavior.
Well, Brother Hamtoni, I'm looking forward to reading that book. Having known you for as long as I have, I'm sure that there are some interesting insights in that publication. So I look forward to reading that book. It's always rewarding to read from folks that I know.
Okay.
As I'm reading, I'm hearing their voice.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll be hearing you read this book.
Okay.
All right. Just a couple of announcements. At Larchmere Arts on the 25th of April, we are going to welcome songstress Victoria Roseman. I'm going to be accompanying her on piano and upright bass. So we want to invite you to attend that concert. Also want to let you know about something that is happening on the 2nd of May at the Phyllis Wheatley Association. It is Wayne B. Chandler on the return of feminine energy. The tickets are $20 in advance, $25 at the door, and there's a student rate of $10. You can RSVP. You need to send your Cash App to $Aaron Sneed 3, or you can call 216-527-7079. That's 216-527-7079. So you're in store for a real treat. Brother Chandler is one of the greatest minds on the planet. I'm going to say that and leave it there. Also, just want to keep you up to date on other things at Larchmere Arts. We are in the planning stages of the Larchmere Cultural Arts Festival. That's going to be coming your way in July, and we're also lining up some features and some hosts for Poetry and Percussion, which is an event that I do with my brother Elijah Gilmore. So with that, we will proceed to the show. We have a great guest today. Last week, we had a conversation with John Butler, and the subject of functional medicine came up. And I just wanted to make sure that we did functional medicine some justice. So I have recruited Sister Yvonne Mitchell to bring us some insight on functional medicine. Now, I'm looking for her bio, and I cannot find it. So we're just going to move forward. But what I will tell you is that she has not only been a practitioner of functional medicine, she's also been a patient. And she shared that with us when she was on the show 2 years ago. She's also going to share with us some information about a recent situation and how she addressed it. And she's going to get some of us together that are experiencing some pains as we continue to evolve and age. You know, when you're young, you get injured and you just spring right back. You know, when you get older, sometimes it just takes a little more time to get yourself back together. So hopefully before the show is over, we will have some tools and some hacks and some tricks and some things that you can do to improve the quality of your health and perhaps save yourself from some of the pain that you have been experiencing. So with that, I'd like to welcome Yvonne Mitchell. She has worked with the Cleveland Clinic for at least 5 years. She did 5 years there. And she talked to me earlier about functional medicine and integrative medicine. So I want to make sure that we talk about what that is. And she's currently with a group called Hyperion. So welcome to the show, Yvonne.
Hi there. Good to be back. It
Yeah,
feels like yesterday, but it wasn't.
yeah. Well,
Time flies, even if you're not having fun.
there it is. There it is. There it is. So
Yeah,
I'm going to find your bio and I'm going to share some things with the audience before this show is over. Maybe we'll do that at the top of the second hour of this show. But before we dive into it, why don't you tell us what functional medicine is and why it is important for us to know about it?
yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I want to clear up, a lot of time people talk about like functional medicine, like it's some kind of way out there kind of thing, and it's not. It really is a very systematic, very scientific based um, modality. And it really there was some effort, and Greater Cleveland was at the lead of some thought about having functional medicine be your first stop instead of your last stop when you have some sort of condition. But basically, what functional medicine does is get to the root cause of situations that you have, symptoms, conditions. You hear things associated with functional medicine like food is medicine. That's one of the things that originated in terms of functional medicine. But what it does, and I actually have something that I'm looking at that I don't know that you'll be able to see, but here's our functional medicine tree, and it's a great way to get you to understand what functional medicine is all about. So picture this as a tree. These things are what we're used to. These are the organs and systems and things that you're accustomed to hearing in terms of your diagnosis and your medical departments, like cardiology and pulmonology and urology, and things that you hear all the time, and some things you may not be from gastroenterology. Okay. And when you have your symptom or you come to um, a clinic or doctor and you have an ailment, they're going to put you in that category, like, oh, you have a heart thing. So let's have you talk to a heart specialist. And that's what you should do in many cases. But it doesn't end there for functional medicine, because they're going to focus on signs and symptoms and other things that you have, and maybe just that. They're going to focus on, it could be a gigantic box, but they're going to focus on their box. Functional medicine is going to focus on your whole system, and they're going to look at, not just the categories of ailments, but they're going to talk about how those categories relate to your whole body system, like how you assimilate and digest, and what your energy sources are, and how you transport various aspects of your system through the body. And they're not going to stop there. They're going to look at, okay, what's your family history? What are your antecedents? What are your triggers? What are things called mediators, things that have influenced you over the years? And they're not going to stop there. They're going to talk about your genetic predispositions. Maybe you got these genes from your mom, and like in my case, my father, uh, back to his side of the family, back to Adam and Eve, had diabetes, heart conditions, artery challenges. And so he passed along a bunch of genes to me, maybe just a little bit, and maybe I didn't get it. Maybe I got most of my stuff related to that from my mom. Okay. And then her half of the family, she didn't have hardly anything. She never had any ailments, but she didn't process toxins well. And so when she came across something like Johnson's baby powder, she ended up with ovarian cancer.
Mm.
And you heard for years on television these ads about, did you have this? And did you ever use that? And a whole bunch of lawsuits were um, went forward. Not in time for my mom, but her doctor, one of his first questions, once they figured out that that's what she had, one of the oncologist department's first question is, do you use Johnson's baby powder? And she's, yeah, I love it. And I use Shower to Shower, also made, by the same company. I love the smell. I wish they made a perfume that smelled like that. We love it. Our whole family uses it. And he said, stop. Because, and later they found that he was reading the literature as time went on. So he was kind of a forerunner to the type of thing that, functional medicine might do in terms of digging into the world of oncology. And they gave her a couple months to live at the time of diagnosis. That was kind of a silent killer early on, but they gave her a few months, and she lived 7 years. And part of it was because her doctor said, "Get off the baby powder." And the other part of it, I wasn't a health coach. I had some intuition about what to do with her. And that led to some of the things that I've done since then, including working for a functional medicine clinic that specializes in cancer. So, as well as functional medicine, so we still have, patients that have other chronic conditions. And see, that is the beauty of functional medicine, and thing that I want to emphasize is, as I mentioned when I was on some time ago, they can find that maybe you have a condition of some sort or some symptoms. It could be anything. You got fatigue, you got bloat, you got, things that you hear people say all the time. And maybe your blood pressure is high and this. And so, but instead of looking for the immediate, let's get a pill for that, or let's get some surgery for that, they're looking at, well, what's the root cause of that? And I ended up talking to a functional medicine doctor whose background had been nephrology, which was, she was a kidney doctor before that. And and she said I had a kidney problem that was triggering all of that. And I expected her to whip out, after 5 years in functional medicine, I expected her to when she named what I had, I expected her to whip out her prescription pad and start writing me kidney prescriptions.
What did she do?
What she did was ask me, when I asked her, well, what am I going to take? Where do I start? And she said, well, we got to find out why you have it. There's no reason why you would have a kidney problem. There's nothing in your antecedent mediators and body systems and genes even that would indicate that you would have that. So we got to find out what is triggering that for you. And it turned out to be mom's half of the calculation, where she didn't process toxins well. And that's what happened with me. Heavy metals and toxins of various sorts. Could be anything, but in my case, it was that, and also some environmental toxins. So they looked
Okay.
at that, and they didn't do, and even at that, they didn't, they want you to get away from that, and if you have like mercury amalgams and things like that, they want you to, have some dental work done or whatnot. But they did nothing. I never took the first pill for my, quote, kidney problem. But the other thing that I did, before they even did that, they didn't want to like go digging on toxins and rooting out. They worked on what I was eating. I had a good diet, but they wanted to eliminate any inflammatory foods and then find out what I might be sensitive to. So you've heard the term elimination diet. So that was kind of the first step. And people panic when they hear that and they say, everything I like is going to be eliminated. Not always, and it's always for a short time. And I had such immediate response to having the key things that are most people are sensitive to and don't know. When I started eliminating a few of those things that most people are sensitive to, I felt better. The fatigue that I had and the other stuff that I didn't even know was a symptom, maybe of the kidneys, or could have been a symptom to any number of things. And after a few weeks, I didn't want to like stop. Whatever I was doing, I was just going to keep doing for the rest of my life because I felt, revived. But that wasn't the point of the elimination diet. The point is, we want to find out what you are sensitive to. So I hadn't had any food sensitivities. You hear people talk about, well, I can't eat this and I can't eat strawberries and I can't eat that and peanuts and various things. And I didn't have anything like that to speak of. But what they found after you eliminate it, and this is this is probably the most valuable thing I learned about food during, my both education and work experience with patients, is after a while, your body is spending all kind of time going, oh, she's eating dairy today, and that's not good for her. So send 1,000 troops over to beat up the dairy she's eating. And so your body, instead of helping you stay well, is beating up the dairy for you.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly,
Yeah.
you go through a process of examining your food choices and then determining what things might be causational and eliminating those things.
Well, actually, nope. There's things they've already figured out that 80% of the people who are sensitive to something might be sensitive to. So they take all that out, and it sounds like a lot of stuff, but I'll give you some examples. They take things out like corn, eggs, in some cases, grains, in some cases, definitely red meat and pork, that people just have reactions to. So they just take that all out. And so you feel like chocolate, just things you might not expect, that because you've never had a problem with them. And then after
at least you think you ain't had a problem with it.
That is exactly right. So you do that for 3 or 4 weeks, and then, or longer. In my case, it was longer, just a coincidence. I thought I had to wait till the dietitian said, you may begin again. But and by the time she said that, I didn't want to begin because I was feeling great. So anyway, and then you reintroduce one of those foods at a time for several days and see if you have a reaction. And there's specific things that you're looking for in terms of those reactions. And people are flabbergasted. Well, I eat 12 eggs a day. Why would I have a problem with that? I love it. Well, that your body is going every time you put one of them in your mouth, and using energy that you need for maintaining other aspects of your health.
Okay.
So I started after not having any sensitivities to anything, I could not reintroduce a thing that they took off the list. The only thing that I could reintroduce that I didn't have any problem with was red meat, which I wanted to eliminate anyway, because, I just, it didn't matter. But I didn't have any reaction to having to have that back in as a test. But that was the only thing. Everything. I reacted to tofu, eggs, corn, wheat, whatever was on the list of things to eliminate. Chocolate, I knew I had a little bit of a sensitivity to, but it turned out to be not dark chocolate. It was milk chocolate. It was dairy that I was reacting to.
Yeah, and there's
So
a difference between the dark chocolate and the milk chocolate. The dark chocolate is more, I'll just say, medicinal than the milk chocolate, because the milk chocolate is basically poison.
it's dairy and sugar. So, turned brown and
Yeah.
delicious. you
Hmm.
know. So, but the people that my experience with patients, I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but my experience with patients, eggs were more people than even dreamed that they had a problem. The one guy I was telling you about that, well, I eat 12 eggs a day or something. I don't eat that in a lifetime, but uh, and so that was the first thing he wanted to reintroduce. And we let people pick, what do they miss the most and start with that. And he got so he went someplace and he just had like an omelet and some other things. You don't want to mix it with other things that you could be sensitive to. So he had some kind of egg dish, and he was sick as a dog before he even left the restaurant.
Hmm.
And he was so sad he had missed those for the whole period. But everything I ate, I wanted to reintroduce corn because I grew up and I had two vegetables and a meat. That was my mother's style of what to do. And every day she asked us, what vegetables do you want? Corn, corn. I loved corn. So that was first on my list, and you had to have, a bunch of it. And I was like the guy with the eggs. And then I had eggs. And then I had now this is an interesting thing. At the end of that time period of testing, they don't say, well, you don't eat that for the rest of your life. It kind of indicates that you have a gut imbalance, and all the little helpers that were keeping you able to eat that stuff when you were eating it have left. They went on to the next guy and said, well, we'll help him with, he can't eat wheat, so we'll go help him. Well, they're not helping you anymore, and so you're being your real self with wheat. And so we work on we the functional medicine types work on healing your gut, which is a big aspect of functional medicine. You've heard of leaky gut and all that. All that is functional medicine. That's where that started. And a lot of people think, oh, that's just hokey or just something somebody made up, but it isn't. And they're learning more and more about things like irritable bowel syndromes and constipations, and just people that they can't go anywhere unless they got a sign nearby that says restroom. Because they're in it or not in it all the time. So
So you've got the microbiome, you've got the whole thing that's happening in your gut. And then you have all these different food products that are available to us. And it's abundantly clear that the reason that America is in the state that it is when it comes to health is because of the things that they're consuming. You know, it's interesting, Yvonne, when you look at the choices of things that are available to us. I mean, back in the day, when we didn't have Whole Foods and Fresh Time and other places that would have this full array of all these different supplements and things that you could take, people were just getting their nutrition from the food that they were eating, and they were eating different food than the food that we're eating now, because back in the day
For
they
real.
farmed differently. They
Mm,
didn't use chemicals like atrazine and some of the other things that are surfacing. And then I'm not sure that we had the same level of dysfunction when it comes to plastics, because plastics are culprit in a lot of dysfunction. So I'm just looking at what our great grandparents ate compared to what we eat. And you talked about the genetic situation, but I would have to think that there was also an environmental element there.
absolutely. You know, in summary, they ate real food, you know, not some chemistry experiment.
Hmm.
And most of what we have is a chemistry experiment.
Yes,
And even
even
if it looks just like it, and we are so, I mean, you can't, I'll give you another example. Stuff like cheese doodles, delicious. And you buy those things and you eat them, and with it, they're like some kind of drug that you might be addicted to. You cannot, you can't walk by that counter anymore after a week without picking up a bag of it. And I remember, and I was one of those people. I was addicted to cheese doodles, and I stopped having cheese, not because of functional medicine or anything. I just thought I got to eat something other than this. You know, and that's all I ever wanted. For example, I mean chips also, but
Mhm.
I eliminated cheese doodle. I didn't have a cheese doodle for 10 years. And then one day they had this little teeny bag, and I said, I'm gonna grab one of those and see how I feel about it. Next thing, I was in there. I had to bring a bag to put these little bags of Cheetos in. I said, look at this level of addiction that I already have. To some people have a sweet tooth. I don't, but I have a salt and crunch Jones.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, you know, they have something called the bliss point. There are
mhm,
actually engineers that create these food products. I'll never forget seeing 60 Minutes, and the correspondent was standing there in front of the man with the white coat on, and he was explaining how they create these flavorings, and he said that they want to reach the bliss point. It's a balance between salt and sweet, and it keeps people coming back to whatever it is. And so he says to the white coat, he says, so in essence you could say it's addictive. And the white coat said, yes, addictive, that's a good word. You know, like, mission accomplished. We got folks
that's
addicted.
right. We made it. That's the
Yeah.
point. That's
Good.
the bliss
Patent that one. Patent that one. Huh? Excitotoxins. You know. But
That's
go ahead.
right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the reason I picked Cheetos is because if you take a bite into a Cheetos, it's like air and crumbs. There is
Mm,
nothing to it, and it's got a bunch of orange for your fingers, and there is
yeah.
nothing to it that would cause you to gotta have it, except
Right.
for what they have put in their chemistry experiment that
Well,
has
it's
worked.
been a long time since I've seen one of those commercials, but what I remember about them is that they depicted some type of creature with his mind being blown. You know, like, to getting to Antonio's point about excitotoxins, they put toxins in the food that excite your brain chemistry. So that way you look forward to connecting with that substance. So you can't just eat one, and you can't walk past the counter when you go to the store. When you see that great big bag sitting on the shelf, it's like, okay, I need that. So we're gonna
Exactly.
step. We're gonna
And that
step.
and the I also picked that example because most people think of things that are sweet or things that contain sugar and all that when they think of mind blown and I gotta have my chocolate or I can't walk 2 steps, those kind of things. But there's a whole world of that. And what they discovered recently about kids and their computers and their games and same thing. It fires off some part of the brain. It's the same principle. They got a little bliss point and they can't go a minute without it. And that's what, I'm sure you've heard the discussions about the impact of gambling on our society getting horrible. And I was reading an article. It's not just lots of young men, lots really targeting black men, all kind of stuff. But they're also now they're got little games for seniors. And they're gonna try to get some bliss points with that because their social security check isn't big enough, and so let's get them on that.
Well, they're valuable right now because the baby booms is seniors yet, so it's a lot of money in treating seniors now because there's a whole lot of seniors reached the baby boom era now.
Yeah. Well, to your point, they have money and they have insurance.
Yeah.
So they're literally walking cash cows.
That's
Uh,
right.
we got to step away for a moment to pay some bills right here on AM 1490
Okay.
WERE 360 Info Network. We're going to be right back after this. Stay
Okay.
with us. We'll be right back.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit cleobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
Cleveland Observer is Cleveland's voice in the community, and we're really pleased to have them aboard as our title sponsor. And we will continue with more 360 Info Network. I promised that I would bring you some biographical information about our guest. She is a health and wellness coach and a proponent of functional medicine. She's a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. She's certified through the Institute of Functional Medicine. She's also a certified life and health coach, grief recovery specialist, hypnotist, and heart, math, and mindfulness intervention practitioner. She began her career in coaching by developing mentorship coaching programs for upwardly mobile employees in a large government agency. While serving as its national director of employee development and training, she later started her own successful coaching business where over the years, she helped clients address several areas such as weight management, retirement planning, grief recovery, spiritual enhancement, habit control, relationships, and more. So quite a diverse background there, and we're very pleased to have her with us today. She is Yvonne Mitchell. So we've talked about the connection between food and health or food and disease. There's also an emotional component in addition to the epigenetic and the historical relationship that we've had with food that have caused problems. Can you talk about the connection between emotion and disease?
Absolutely. Well, uh, you've heard a lot in recent years about trauma-based illness and those kinds of things, and that is a very important aspect of functional medicine and also health in general is getting, as we get to the root cause, the body keeps score of all the things that have happened, good, bad, and indifferent. And it's not just food, it's, how much of your time is spent in the state of anger or sadness or depression, job stress. You're talking about the police force. By the way, I meant to interject that my father was fire chief for Cleveland. So I spent my life growing up with the safety forces. So, yeah. Anyway, so, relationships, toxic relationships really affect your health. And usually when some part of the intake that we do with a functional medicine patient, this was very, very true in, when I was at the clinic, people spent hours before they came in going through their history and what has happened and their adverse childhood experiences and so forth, because there was always a strong connection. What happened 3 months before you got this condition? Even if it was like an accident, what was going on in your mind and with your emotions prior to that point? What negative things, what super happy things had happened? So, and we found a big connection between those things. And we could look at their history and say, oh, okay, look at these peaks. We used to draw graphs about various things that they had in their life and ailments that they had. And okay, that's when the divorce happened. And this is when the, loss of a child or something massive happened. And this is what happened that caused these adverse childhood experiences, abuse of various sorts, and that kind of thing.
Well, you know something, I'm just noticing in terms of relationships that I have and friends that I know that have a substantial degree of grief. And I when I'm reading your bio, I saw that you address grief. And of course, grief is an emotion, and an emotion has an impact on our health. But I know folks that experience chronic inflammation, things like fibromyalgia and lupus and other things. And then when I hear stories about their families, I hear about them having family members that have left. Some are responsible for the care of others. I have a very good friend whose sister is paralyzed, and her mother is basically not functioning because she had a stroke a few years ago and she never really fully recovered, is unable to speak, and so forth and so on. So I see folks that are managing the lives of others and their dysfunction and their own dysfunction, and I would have to think that at a certain point it takes a toll on the quality of their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And very often as a matter of fact, one of the things that I'm noticing, I'm spending a lot of time, and you'll find out why in a minute or two, but I'm spending a lot of time with people who are caregivers. And very often somebody that's been years as a caregiver ends up, they're fine a lot of the time while they're caregiving. And then right after, they have a serious problem themselves because, the emotional toll of that. And people in caregiving professions, I got to be careful, working with cancer patients and chronically ill patients. Right. And very often, like managing people with dementia and Alzheimer's and whatnot, are very prone to get that, even if they're not related. It's not like they're a
Yeah.
relative and they have the same genes or anything, but
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
end up with
Mhm.
that because it has affected them in that way. And so working with them in the same way, and not just the little things, not just whatever pill has come up that you can start taking, whatever, it's the whole lifestyle factor
Mhm. Yeah,
arena.
see, here's the thing that I want to inject a few things. Yeah, I want to go back to morality because we had a show a few weeks back, and I brought up the point of we don't really recognize that we are under attack. When a person is under attack, they respond or should act differently, you
Mhm.
know. And I don't see much of that in the way and how we operate. And the reason I'm saying this, when we talked about those excitotoxins, when we talked about them, the milk chocolate and the this and the that, they know those things. They know those things, how they affect the body. And they may or may not know the combination of these things. See, when you have these clinical trials, and correct me when I'm wrong, and even with medicine, they don't pair them up with different other medicines sometimes, with those clinical trials, because they got certain funding, they tested one thing, they say it's safe, but how do I know it's safe with this situation over here? You know what I mean? And so just like they put out some things years ago we won't talk about, but they don't know how it lines up with other things, or putting all a combination of several things together on how it affects the body. So we have, but yet and still, I want to look at and just get people briefly to think about the morality of the people that know that this stuff is attacking you, is attacking the body, and they still doing it. That's why I say hospitals is a business, before anything, because they're expecting all this pathology that's going to be coming up. That's why they don't build new wings. They don't have all these hospitals or have facelifts and things of that nature. So they're expecting future pathology to come.
And then
Now,
on every street corner, they're putting up a assisted living, and then the assisted living
oh, come
after
on now.
that,
Yeah.
and the after
Come on now.
that, and the
It's a
after
business.
that.
Just like I talked about the baby boomers. They preparing for that. It's big money. I remember about 10 years ago, somebody, I was watching a seminar, some people was talking about get prepared for the baby boomers because they're coming. So create a business that the baby boomers would need, or taking care of them, or home health aides or whatever. They was preparing for it. So I just want us to take a deep look into morality. So that's why you have to do some homework and research yourself and understand how your system works, and what's, what it needs to run optimally and things of that nature. We have to do a better job ourselves, because you're dealing with people that are just concerned about money, and some of the stuff that you craving for is your body starving certain nutrients in the body.
Mhm,
So you eating those Cheetos, or you eating this, or you eating that, and a
mhm.
lot of that comes from a lack of nutrition of the body, and your body's trying to get it the best way they can.
That's
Yeah.
right. And you said another thing that I wanted to go back on, and that is that if you end up having, I don't want to lose my train of thought here because you said so many gems,
Mhm.
but but one of the big roles, like you heard that I'm a health coach, and
Mhm.
I know what I was trying to say. The behavioral aspect of, I know I'm not supposed to eat chocolate, and I know I'm not supposed to eat sugar, and I can't eat fried food or I'll die. Okay, but I'm still going and I'm gonna have it. And the thing is that is really my role as a health coach. The clinician, the practitioner, the specialist is really good at identifying the fact that you shouldn't eat fried food. Okay. But I'm really good at helping you figure out, well, how do I do that given my life and the marketing that comes at me all the time and what
Mhm.
I have available to me in my price range? How do
Mhm.
I navigate all that. And you know what? I don't say, okay, effective immediately, stop doing this and stop doing that. I figure out what is going on in your life that is impacting you. And I help you find ways around that. What if you have to do the elimination diet and you got five kids and two husbands in the house and they all want different things and you're the cook? Okay, and you got to be on the elimination diet. How do I navigate that?
Mhm.
And see, I end up seeing you. You see the doctor. You got a wait list for 6 months to see the doctor,
Yeah.
but you can see me next week.
But Miss Mitchell too, what is that draw? What is that mental psychological draw? I know it's there when you're feeling that emotional depression or something, and just something just you like ice cream or you like it's feeling that dopamine piece or something or what?
Exactly. It's that firing off the brain. Your head goes back, and or there's a commercial. You walk by it on television. You didn't even watch the commercial, but you walked by the TV when they were talking about butter pecan. And the fact that I mentioned that when you go to the store and you walk by butter pecan, you remember that Yvonne said, I like Yvonne. And she said butter pecan. The next thing you know, you got to buy it.
Mm, mm,
So it's that kind of thing. So like those 5 years I didn't have Cheetos, something happened that last week where they had a little bag. I said, I can do that. I can have a little bag. But I had to have 10 of them. And as soon as I finished it, I was ready for the next one.
Yvonne, I gotta ask this question. What happens to a person when they're told that it's 6 months that you have to wait to see your doctor?
I know that was one of my big jobs in functional medicine. And sometimes it's longer than that. Or worse, and this happened to me a bunch of times while I was being treated. My wonderful doctor that everybody liked and waited a year to see, you saw them once, and next thing you know, they was gone. They started their own business back in their home state or country or whatever, and they were gone. And you had to move on to the next person. You can imagine, you finally get somebody who understands and is empathetic and is fabulous, and they're gone. I went through a whole group of teams of people like the dietitian left and this one left and the behavioral therapist left and definitely the doctor was gone,
Mm.
the nurse practitioner.
mm.
And I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna find the next best one. And that's how I helped them navigate that. That was one of my major activities, is helping them be on that wait list and hang in there. And not in a negative way. I mean, I wasn't tricking them or saying conniving, their brain with it or anything. Just helping them deal with it. Okay. So here's your alternative, and here's some other approaches, and look at this page and read those backgrounds. Who appeals to you there? Um, Try to get somebody new that's going to stay a while, that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
that
We
was that was a major challenge.
Okay. We have a few moments left in the radio broadcast, and I want to make sure that the folks that are listening on the radio know how they can connect with you and how you are connected to Hyperion, the entity that you are employed with right now. So, can you
Yeah,
talk about Hyperion?
yes. Hyperion Functional Medicine. That's their actual name, and they were originally headquartered just in Cleveland, and now they have expanded uh, beyond. But it's still a remote practice. So Hyperion Functional Medicine is their website, and like I was telling you about, most functional medicine practices begin with getting a bunch of background information on you. And you have the opportunity to, in many cases, try them out to see if you can relate to them as a practitioner. So if you go to the website, if you want, let's say you're a cancer patient or you read the information on the website and you say, that sounds like me, I want that. And so you can go in and have a inspiration encounter, is what we count, we talk about. And you can see the main practitioner, which you have to see, and the health coach. We have a dietitian. If it's a cancer patient, we have a cancer dietitian and a behavioral therapist. So going to the website, if that is, if you're interested in the cancer things. If you're just interested in health and wellness coaching, which is what I do, I am not a doctor and I don't play one on TV or Zoom. But I know what they do, and I know how, like, if you have a good doctor and it's a situation, but I just can't do that, and I can't take all those supplements, and I can't afford it, and my husband don't believe in, and my wife don't believe in it either. I have both. I've got this confusion in my life. So you need a health coach. Or if part of your problem is that you do have grief or you have weight problems or any of that are behavioral in nature, you can just have a health coach, not through Hyperion, but through Creative Life Transformations. That's the group, the group that I'm working with. My group, in other words.
Okay.
And
so you have a practice outside of your connection with Hyperion.
I really haven't in the past several months since my new incident. I haven't been doing that, but I'm getting well again, so that I'll be doing more of that in the future.
Yes.
But,
well, I want to talk to you about the situation and how you came out of it, because I think there's probably something in it for those who may have experienced something similar. So we'll talk about that on the other side of the hour. Antonio, was there something you wanted to interject?
Yeah, it takes us back. If you the conversation we had with John when I brought up, what I learned from him is understanding that you just can't heal the physical man. You got to heal the spiritual and the mental, on how it's all connected, and what functional medicine is bringing, that holistic approach. And for us to be in 2026 still monkeying around with that kind of understanding, either we are ignorant or they messing with us, one or the other, that don't understand that it feed, each one of those entities feed off each other. So unless we real slow, or they purposely, keeping us departmentalized like that, and so folks can get paid or what, you know what I mean? So again, I think based on the past of us living in this country, seeing what's going on, and experiences African Americans have had thus far, it should prompt us to say, hey, I need to do some stuff and some research on my own, and understanding who and what that I am, we are, and things of that nature, because you're not going to get it from mainstream, because it's about dollars and cents. So I'm back to morality. So if you understand that and know that, and understand that you're under attack, you're gonna have to take this thing into your own hands.
That's right. That's right. And there's a name for that too. Self-efficacy. And that's what you want to have is, it's wonderful that you've got lots of guidance and lots of resources and whatnot, but you're being able to, based on all the education that you get from hearing speakers and other people, you need to take all that into account and say, now, what do I think about this? And how do I feel about that? And little by little, there are some doctors now getting the message that people are unhappy with the level of service that they get. And I'm finding that, I do have a way of picking good medical support, but they're asked, well, how would you like to approach that? Here's some option for you. What do you think might be best for you? And I said, well, could we try what we did before? I don't want to take all these pills. I want to do something more holistic, or I don't want to have that surgery. I want to try physical therapy first. And instead of blowing you off, which is what people do, and putting you on the track that their medical provider or the insurance company says should happen, they let you have some input, at least speak your piece about it. And maybe they'll try and talk you out of it, or maybe they'll just listen and give you a chance. My doctor, I'm shocked. He said, I don't want to take this. And he said, okay, that's good. Okay, that sounds reasonable. When you explain where you're coming from, I can't do all that, then, and maybe they'll even say, well, I have a health coach. She can help.
Well,
So,
that word can't is such a strong word. And sometimes people need to consider taking can't out of their vocabulary just because of the limitations that it places on their lives. And they will find out the things that they think they can't do, they actually can. You just have to have the will and the fortitude to make it happen.
that's right. And just, sometimes it's just like opening their mind to possibilities.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
We
let
have
them, let them say what, oh, you have to go.
Yeah, we got 55 seconds before we have to make our transition. So I just wanted to make sure
I
we
don't
get a
want
few
to
things.
transition.
Okay, we're going to transition to completely online, but we're not transitioning out of this life. Okay.
I don't
All
want to
right. You're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490. Our guest is Yvonne Mitchell. She is a health and wellness coach, and she's going to share with us something that happened to her recently that she is still in the process of recovering from, and looking forward to hearing that anecdote, as well as thanking you for listening. We also want to thank our engineer, Tone Harley, for making things happen for us each and every week right here on AM 1490 WERE. Don't forget, you can check us out at the Journey of Hamtonio on
Johnny
YouTube
Witt.
with Antonio. And you can go to my YouTube channel as well. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make it a great day. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
All right. It's 12 o'clock noon right here on AM 1490 WERE. And again, we would like to invite you to join us on YouTube and subscribe to our channels. We do what we can to bring you quality information every week, and it's a labor of love, to be sure. So like, comment, subscribe, share these broadcasts with others, because there is information that other folks can use as well. It doesn't cost you anything. It's absolutely free to subscribe. As I said before, we're talking with health and wellness coach Yvonne Mitchell, and she had an incident that happened in the relatively recent past, 6 days on the floor. Talk to us about what happened and how you recovered from it.
Okay. Am recovering. Okay. So I tripped over the end of the comforter of my bedspread. And just, I was doing projects around the room, and I was taking this and taking that. And I didn't hurt I didn't break anything, or as far as I knew, I thought I was good. I thought I got up and just went on with whatever I was planning to do for the rest of the evening. But the reality was that I ended up laying on the floor of my room for 5.5 days with no food, no water, couldn't reach a phone, couldn't get up, could not move. And there I was. I could hear the phones ringing in the other room. I had a cell phone, but because I had all this stuff going on neurologically, I couldn't use the phone, and they cut me off. I didn't know they did that. They said you come back in 2 hours, and eventually come back in a day. And eventually I couldn't do anything with my phone, and the other one, the last one, was in the other room. So fortunately, and I have Facebook to thank for this, my a relative in another city 3 hours away said, she hasn't posted anything about my new baby all week. Have you heard from her? No. So they sent somebody to, that lived in the Cleveland area to my house with the police. And the police yelled and yelled, and I yelled back to the extent that it could have all been in my mind that I was yelling back, but they didn't hear me and they were going to leave. And if they had, I would have unplugged myself because I would have given up laying there for 6 days. But anyway, the person that came said, I cannot report back that we didn't go in and find out if she was dead or alive. I can't do that. So I'll take responsibility for whatever you have to do. And they found a way into my house without knocking down a whole bunch of stuff. And as soon as they had a little crack of air, they called out to me and I answered and they heard me. So anyway, the fire department came and picked me up on the ambulance and put me on a gurney and took me to the hospital for the next couple weeks, and then a rehab facility because I was like an inch from dying. You can go three days without water before you're at risk, and I was already at 6. So, and you can go 30 days without food. I didn't know that. I learned that after I got discharged from the hospital, and I was covered with pressure wounds. Those are like bed sores from laying on the hardwood floor. And I literally had the last big one heal, close up. It's still not, I can press on most of them, and I'm aware of the fact that they're still there and there's still discomfort. But I'm technically healed. They rang the bell at the wound center saying I'm healed. So, and I had to be careful not to make any more because if you can't walk, you're going to be sitting and you're going to be making some more stuff I didn't even know about. I didn't even know about this whole world. So a lot for weeks, they just gave me stuff to build me back up because all my vitals were gone and my kidneys were bad again. And I took some kind of mineral of some sort every hour on the hour and so on. So that's what has been going on since September till the end of March when I was deemed well enough to function. So that's new. So I have continued for the past several, I've continued working for Hyperion, as a health coach. But they had to get another one of our patients was a health coach.
Okay.
She filled in for me.
Did functional medicine play any role in your recovery or your continuing recovery?
Yes, I am. Again, by this point, all the people that I ever worked with as a patient in functional medicine were not there. So I restudied the thing and I decided I'm going to continue. I'm a continuing patient with them. And so I'm not seeing them every couple of months, but I'm seeing them like every 6 months. And because this happened, I was reinstituted. And so they took a look at a few things. Now, this is after being in the hospital, being in the rehab, having those doctors do whatever they are doing, the wound center. And so I went to functional medicine, and of course, they said they knew all the tests that I had had and all the activity that other people felt, because they still don't know why I fell and why I couldn't get up. They still don't know right now. So I have one of those medical alerts because they didn't want me to drive until a couple weeks ago, because if I fell and was on the floor for 6 weeks, it could happen today while I'm talking to you. So, so they, the medical provider that I have now in functional medicine said, well, did they do any kind of heart tests? I don't see any of those on your repertoire. He wanted to look at, I had never had anything like that. But I got this family history back to Eve with artery problems. And, you know, they checked my brain because I didn't mention this, but the other thing I had was the illusion that I was in the attic of my house, not on the first floor. I had the illusion that I was going out and that I won a contest and that a TV crew was in my house and filming all the wonderful things I had done in my home. And all this time, I had the most wonderful fantasies going on this whole time. And the other thing that connected the dots, I always had, like for the last several years, something called essential tremor. You know what essential tremor, essential means? They don't know. They don't know why you have it, and they don't know what's going to fix it. And so that's what was going on before. I, was tremory, and I had trouble eating, and I couldn't write. That was, way more than I had had. And 2 days after I went to the doctor about regular physician about that, they gave me a prescription. I don't know if I filled it. I tried to count the pills and they went all over the room. So I couldn't count and see if I had taken them before I went to the hospital. I didn't know. And, but anyway, so they think it's possibly some neurology thing and they think I bumped my head, but I don't think I bumped my head.
That's really amazing to me to hear you say that they didn't think to check your heart, because it seems to me, and again, purely anecdotal, no statistics to back up my opinion on this, but it seems to me that, when folks come to the hospital, the first thing they do is they say, well, we got to run some tests, CAT scan, MRI, EKG, electrocardiogram, all those things, because they got to find out. So to hear you say that they still don't know why you fell.
Well, but they did do some of those things, but the one thing they didn't do was any kind of major checkup.
But that's the point. That's the point, because we live in Cleveland, home of the Cleveland Clinic, the #1 heart hospital in the world. How do you? I'm just trying to process how you missed that opportunity to go down the path that leads to heart surgery.
Because they got so much other tests and money from what they did do. Okay. To your point.
Okay. That's
amazing. They already, you wouldn't believe, and I didn't see all of them. You wouldn't believe the bill.
I can believe that. But see, well, why does it seem like they are very hesitant? I know, I know the answer to it. It's about dollars and cents, but is it true that the patient can kind of demand that they do an MRI on different situations? Because it seems like, you know, they tend to pick up more things when they do the MRI, but they are slow to do that. They just do the X-rays and they'll push you along and keep on going. Is you know, is that seems to be true in the whole medical?
Well, you know what? That's what you keep hearing in the background about, well, we're going to work with the insurance companies and we're going to get them on board, meaning that's kind of the holdup, because Cleveland Clinic and everywhere else would be happy to give you some MRIs
Okay.
if the insurance is going to cover it. And
So that's the culprit then.
It's not going to say no.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's the culprit then, huh?
Right.
It's the insurance companies. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and you heard from Kamala Harris, and even Trump picked that up too. That, well, we're gonna work with the insurance company. We're gonna lower prescription costs and all that, because the insurance won't pay. They told me I was going to be in the hospital, you know, the rehab hospital, for a couple of months until I could walk and do all this stuff. The insurance company, somebody said, you know, she's doing real well. You know, we think we can be cheaper with home health care, which ordinarily would be long-term care insurance.
Right.
You know, but they decided, okay, we got to keep her here because she's a wreck, but we can have people come to her home for months cheaper than keeping her here.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
then we have to pay staff to feed her and do this and cook, and they sent me home.
you know, I've just experienced in life and loved ones who have been to the hospital, and sometimes it could be as simple as you were dehydrated. You didn't have enough water in your system, and then you might faint or whatever, and then you go to the hospital and they discover you have insurance. And that's when that's when the train starts out the station, and now you taking all these tests. You in the hospital for a whole week, and then they send you home and they say, well, looks like you're okay. And they might send you home with a prescription or something. But it just seems to me that it's all about the money. I was at a meeting earlier in the week. I met with some creatives from other countries. One was from Eswatini, one was from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, one was from Uganda, and one was from Algeria. I don't know what his genre was, but he said that artists in Algeria don't pay taxes. He said that they get free health care. And on top of everything else, they get money from the government. The government pays them to be artists. Now, just suppose that against America. And what I told him, I said, America is a place of exploitation and taxation. You know, look at what the government of Algeria is doing for its constituents, for the people who live there, and look what they're doing for us here in America. And that whole idea of you got to pay for health care, and if you don't have the resources, then you just out of luck. They rushed you out the hospital because the insurance wasn't going to pay for you to be in a recovery facility for 3 months. So, oh, well, you know, she looked like she's doing pretty good. Let's send her home and then hook her up with a healthcare aid. So ironic, Yvonne, back in September, I had an episode. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I didn't eat solid food for 3 weeks. Lost 40 pounds. Endured 2 surgeries. But while I was in the hospital and after I got out of the hospital, I discovered a few things. And one that I want to talk to you about is the rights that patients have. I found out after I got out of the hospital that I could tell them, don't come in my room after 11 p.m. because I need to sleep. I had folks busting through the door at 4 a.m. to take x-rays, disturbing my sleep, and sleep is an essential part of recovery.
See them roots down
Talk
there?
to
Sleep
us.
is
Talk,
right in
talk,
there.
talk to us, Yvonne. Tell us what we need to know from that chart.
Well, no, I'm just saying the lifestyle factors, sleep and recreation. See these roots?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first one listed.
Sleep.
Exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration. Just like you said, I do believe that that was my problem because I have since. That's the other thing I learned from functional medicine, that I might have a autoimmune condition that is I got this kidney thing, I got this thing, I got dry eye, I got dry this, I got blocked salivary glands. And I looked it up and I told my regular PCP, I said, could I have Sjogren's, which is an autoimmune condition? And he said, whoa, you may be right. Because this guy has an open mind. He's a regular traditional doctor, but he listens to people, especially if they're a functional medicine doctor or something. And excuse me, I'm not a doctor and I don't put on TV. But he said, you may be on to something. No, he didn't say I was going to do anything, but you may be on to something. And this is what he said. Well, we're going to try the approach that we're on. But if that doesn't change your situation, then we're going to do some tests for Sjogren's. But guess what that meant? Now, I give this guy an A+. That's why I picked him, even with that feedback, because he did listen. And he also told me something I didn't know, which is that Sjogren's is very common. People don't know this in the African American community. So this dry this and dry that and all that. I didn't know that, and I'm the one that suggested it to him that I might have. I didn't know that. I looked at it every time I looked at something for one of these things. I had it. It said, unless you have Sjogren's. So anyway, I agree, and we never got to that because I was on the ground. So I think what you said about going in the hospital and you could just have dehydration, I think that was a big part of why I ended up on the floor. Is I was dehydrated from this condition, which they haven't tested yet, but they will because I'm a functional medicine patient, and so on. That's the story with it. And so the journey continues. That's why when you said, when they rang the bell and I'm healed, that's from those wounds. That's here, up here with the cardiology and the this and the that and the this and the that. But down here is where the antecedents and African Americans tend to have more Sjogren's than others and autoimmune conditions. So you asked me to tell you more about this.
The foundation,
yeah, the foundations of health. And those are those lifestyle factors that everybody says, well, when I get better, when you give me my prescription and I have my surgery, then I'll worry about this. No, have this and then worry about your the other things that are not foundational, because that will help you so much. And it won't matter whether you have cancer or you have dementia or you have heart conditions or whatever it is that you have. These things will help you to get well. This will help you, those pills, to work if you end up having to take them. It will help you heal from the surgery you might have to have. Because if you're, if I had one thing that I would do differently during this 5 months because I was so taken by these wounds and people visiting and dressings and all that. And I couldn't walk, and I couldn't drive. And, just a bunch of things were going on. And we had all those blizzards,
Mm-hmm.
and people didn't want to take me anywhere because it was just a scream. But if I had one thing that I would do, because I couldn't walk and all that, I said, well, let's postpone the physical therapy until my wounds are a little better. And what happened is now I really can't walk. I was walking good, relatively speaking, but now that my joints hurt worse and my feet, where the things were in the back and all that, are worse because I couldn't move. I was mostly sitting. Sitting is the new smoking.
Mm.
So I was mostly sitting, and I could have been doing something. And now that I am doing it, I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
I'm feeling better because I put that back in. That could have been all the time. And I did right. There aren't enough hours in the day. If I'd have had a health coach like me, I could have spotted it.
Mm.
If I had my own health coach. But you miss things, like I'm doing something altogether new, wounds. And they were gross too. They've taken
Mm.
pictures of them.
Hamptonia, you're going to get a kick out of this. We
Mm.
got a call from Todd today.
Mm.
And he asked this question. He says, are there fruits, healthy fruits and vegetables, no matter how to prepare, to have some of the same effects as foods that are not good for you? They're addictive. Can you, I'm just reading his note, and perhaps it's the transcription that's a little bit faulty. But I guess what he's trying to find out is, are there fruits and vegetables that have components in them that depend on how you cook them? And I know I I can answer part of that question. Some foods are better cooked than raw.
And
Tomatoes.
vice versa.
Yeah, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess perhaps he's looking to find out which are the healthy fruits and vegetables that we should be eating, and which ones that perhaps we should avoid. And I'll add a part two to this question, and it deals with oxalates. I wanted to ask you about that in the last hour, because some folks that have high level of oxalates also suffer from depression. They also suffer from chronic inflammation and other things that the oxalates, which are an anti-nutrient in the foods, cause. They cause issues in our bodies. And so some people are more tolerant of oxalates. So could you talk a little bit about, what fruits and vegetables might be beneficial, perhaps some that might not be as effective cooked as they are raw, and vice versa, and perhaps touch on oxalates and how they affect us?
Okay, you're asking me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because you got a bunch of knowledgeable people here. I the lots and lots of people heard the word oxalate, and there's lots of foods that have high oxalate content. And most people think of things like spinach and kale and some of the others. But everybody isn't. It's personalized. You got to find out, like you do with the elimination diet, am I one or am I not? And half the time it's because you have a gut problem. It has nothing to do with, if you healed a little bit more, you could take on the food that you might be able to use and need, or you could eat less and still benefit. So, you really need to, at least do the level of elimination that comes from an elimination kind of diet. And then you need to see a specialist, like a registered licensed dietitian specializing in that area, to find out what you should do personally. And for example, I eat a ton of spinach and kale and everything that is considered by some to be a high oxalate food without. Now somebody will say, maybe that's why you fail. But it's, not what I'm saying is I strictly benefit from it. The other part of your question was, examples of foods. Tomatoes, for example, better cooked for everybody. Cooked tomatoes in foods, protective against cancer, prostate cancer, cooked tomatoes better than raw. Onions better raw than cooked. So if you got to cook with onions, which you do, put them in. Don't be putting them in for the whole time. Put them in the last step so that they are cooked but not lose all their
everything.
And there's a lot of foods like that you don't want to overcook, which we have a habit of doing, overcooked vegetables, because you lose the nutrients. Cooking tends to reduce that.
Let me ask a question here, and it's something we talked about before on the show. I just want to get your take and opinion on it. When we talking about geographic areas, and far as food is concerned, and we always talk about how wonderful and magnificent the body is, and how the body adapts to its environment. It's going to try its best, initially, but as you go through generations of people, your body adapts to certain things in certain environments. But dealing with some of the foods and based on your geographical location, is that something to consider here? I guess, is that where those genes come in, to where you have some type of gene that just has an issue with a certain type of chemical in this particular food or nutrient or whatever, So I'm just bringing that into the equations for us to think about that, because I know, far as geographically, far as Black folks living in this particular region, we don't get enough sunlight. It's cold. It's not the best for our melanin and things of that nature. So by talking to Dr. Brown, we talked about certain areas where food, it plays a major role in far as our intake is concerned.
Well, that's absolutely true. I'm still jealous of people who have, though I wouldn't want to live there, but you're in California or Florida, you got it made, in terms of year-out vegetables and fruits, and in season is all the season. So, you got that going. You have the fact that, like you were talking about, D3, deprocessing. Nobody north of Florida gets enough vitamin D. And then there's another thing. If you have your genes examined, there are people that, they're taking thousands of milligrams of vitamin D and all that stuff, and their body doesn't process it, because your body's got to take that and turn it into something usable. And their genes say, I don't do that. So, for example, and I'm one of those people. I am one of those people. So what I'm supposed to do because of that is, every chance I get, I should be outside. Some kind of sun. In the morning, I should go out and garden. In the middle of the day, I should be in the swimming pool. At the end of the day, I should be power walking, not for the exercise, for the sunlight. And that is the last thing that I do. I am indoors, I'm inside, So, and I gotta do something about that. It doesn't matter how much vitamin D I take. It's not going to be enough.
I want to rewind a little bit and go back to food and just mention a couple of things that, because we live in this age of information, I'm just getting so much information. So last night I watched this video about foods that are detrimental to you if you reheat them.
Yes, I seen some of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I
so
know there's a name for that too. Yeah.
one of them was rice. You know, and white rice has been demonized, and well, you know, you got to eat brown rice, but there are some benefits to eating white rice instead of eating brown rice. But basically the message was eat it after you cook it, but don't reheat it, because when you reheat it, you destroy some of the benefits that are in the rice for you. Their spinach was another one that they said you shouldn't reheat it. And they say in some camps, they say spinach is better eaten cooked than it is raw. And it could be because of oxalates, or it could be because of lectins, or any other whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess it just brings me to us having a greater awareness of food. Just like you mentioned, onions are better for you raw than cooked. And then you've got these different varieties of onions that have different benefits or properties. So what I heard in the video that I watched a couple weeks ago is that red onions definitely are better raw. You know,
well, red onions are better, period.
Period. Yeah.
Because they're colorful. The rainbow diet. Okay. And I don't believe in diet, you know, because it says diet. I believe in like purple. You know, if you eat, a lot of people eat healthy, but they only eat 10 healthy things. And they eat a lot of it. They don't get the diversity of color. So color is good. Diversity is good for a lot of things, including the food that you eat. And the more variety you have. And so when you said purple onions, purple is a way to get purple. And it's got some nutrients that are going to help you with your energy and your this and that, and prevent cancer and prevent everything. So, yeah.
Well, there are different schools of thought. While I was in the hospital, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos about health and so forth. And I saw one that had to deal with these blue zones. And there are people who live in certain blue zones who eat things that are native to that area, to get to Antonio's point about geography and food. And so they have a limited diet, but they get what they need from the limited amount of things that they take in. And then the other school of thought, as you just mentioned, was have this variety of foods, the rainbow, the antioxidants, all of the beneficial things that are connected to the pigments or the colors of the food, you know. And when you look at the refined food products, those colors are created artificially. But when you look at natural things, that color is actually what's giving you what you need.
Exactly. And here's why diversity is good. Just to interject one more point about that. We don't have the slightest clue all the things that a purple food does. We know it's good for this, and maybe it has vitamin C, but we don't know the half of it. We just know what we have figured out. But wait till they go to the other side of the moon. You know? You know, so it's wait till they go to Mars, you know, they'll be finding out things forever. So if you're eating a variety, and that's why I am convinced that variety, like, even though I like this book cover, I don't like the book, but I like her perspective on all the things that we have figured out, but that's not the tip of the iceberg of what there is to figure out. So hedge your bets and get a wide variety.
Okay. But here's the thing too, you know, I believe probably during the time I was studying a little bit with John, and it was Dr. Wallach came out with a tape called "Dead Doctors Don't Lie." Yes. And I think you can still get that maybe on the YouTube or something to that nature. And what stuck with me, you know, and because he went and studied 5 cultures that was living to be 120 or so plus years old. So he narrowed it down on you know, what they all had in common. And what they all had in common, he mentioned the Russian Georgians, and I did some research on it. And yeah, 120-year-old. You know, I remember my brother talking about he seen a special where folks with 100 years old running a 100-yard dash and all that. It was the mineral intake. The mineral intake. We tend to forget that mineral. We do a lot of vitamins, but we don't do a lot of minerals. And he went on even to talk about how even in some instances, dogs was getting more minerals than we were getting in our food, in the dog food, you know, and things like that. So, you know, I just, you know, just to make a statement and just draw that out there, because again, we need to start concentrating a little bit more on those minerals as well. I know with soursop and with sea moss and stuff that brought, you know, the mineral context or conversation into play, but we definitely need to, you know, really zero in on that even more so.
Yeah. Well, that's when I was in the hospital, you know, that whole first week, you know, I was like, give me something to drink. Give me something. No, they gave me little cups of this for these minerals, and that meant to bring me back to life so that I could process things. And minerals. And that is the thing that you can do about Sjogren's. The reason my doctor, he wasn't interested, you know, he tried to be, but his training prevented him from being interested, because there's nothing you can't give a prescription for Sjogren's, and you can't give any surgery for that. And so he wasn't interested. But he said, we'll test you for it if the stuff I'm already planning doesn't work. But at least his mind was open that far. And that's the situation.
Yes.
Oh, you were talking about the blue zones. We got one in our country, and that's Loma Linda, California. And that's where the Seventh-day Adventists, who are primarily
vegetarian.
Yeah, they're primarily vegetarian, but they don't dissipate. That's the word I was looking for. That's a term they use. We don't dissipate. They don't drink. They don't smoke. They don't, you know. So it's not just the food. They don't dissipate. They don't gamble. They don't let their brain fire off on everything. And to the extent, but everybody's not vegetarian in blue zones. Some aren't.
Right. Well, one of the things that came up is the fact that somebody was saying in none of the blue zones are they vegan. In none of the blue zones are they entirely plant-based. And for whatever reason, their diets are serving them well. You know, Okinawa is one of those examples, you know, but Okinawa, they have this idea that you eat until you're 80% full. So you're not taxing your digestive system.
Every dietitian thing in functional medicine says 80%, 75.
Yes, right.
You know,
and they also drink green tea throughout the day. So there are certain things that they do that are cultural, actually, you know, and then it's just the whole attitude towards the food. I mean, in Japan, they have tea ceremonies, right? So you hold the cup in your hand and you admire it, and you know, and now I'm hearing that you speak to it.
I just finna say that.
So you infuse the water with a code that serves your body, you know, and I perhaps that's the spiritual mental connection between you and the food and the water. But you know, we just grab the Aquafina bottle and we throw it back, you know.
We get all the plastic and everything.
Yeah, we're drinking dead water because the water has not been energized, and we have the ability to energize the water, but we don't think of ourselves as having that power. So we're completely oblivious to it. So the water doesn't serve us, the food doesn't serve us, and then on top of that, we got things in the sky, that are dropping things to the ground, that deplete the minerals from the soil, so we don't get the minerals that we need to get in our food, because the food ain't getting the minerals from the soil. I want to ask you about this, because we talk about food, we talk about diet, and those who give us the information about diet are dietitians. But the idea that I have about dietitians is that they're not all created equal.
That's
You know,
right. That's
you
why I go to functional medicine dietitians.
okay. So the functional medicine dietitian, though, may not be an advocate of a plant-based diet. And I know that for some, a plant-based diet is the answer. For instance, folks who have diabetes. And this is Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Esselstyn documented it. The movie is Hungry for Change. You can watch it for yourself.
I don't have, because I know, but what I'm saying about that is that people that walked into functional medicine and said, "Hi, I'm plant-based. I'm a vegan. Do me, and I want to see your dietitian." They get the 100% service.
Okay.
Okay, because we are talking about, we're not just talking about nutrition. We're talking about nutrition, hydration, stress resilience, relationship, exercise, movement. We got, regardless of our beliefs. And I spent my whole, I did the keto diet with people. I'm not a dietitian, but it's the behavioral change. So I talk to people about every kind of food diet. People in functional medicine, the Functional Medicine Institute, they assigned that they were doctors and they got a health coach from IFM to help them with their behavioral change to whatever their prescribing person wanted them to eat. If they wanted them to be a carnivore, we could help them, do the behavioral change. And so, because functional medicine has got this whole thing, and they're specifically down here, they are not up here deciding, just I'm going to stick with the how to treat cancer and how to treat hearts and how to treat gastroenterology. We're into the whole thing, including that, and all of these things in particular. And while we're talking about it, environmental pollutants, anybody that's eating, I'm a pescatarian. Well, all your fish are eating plastic, and so are you, because you eat them. so we just make sure people are informed, regardless of what they end up having to do because somebody prescribed it or want to do. But
here's an indication of that. When I talked about morality, now it's becoming a real common talk. People we talking about these plastics and microplastics and plastics in the fish, and they cutting people open, seeing plastic in the brains and all that kind of stuff.
Babies.
Like that. Huh?
Newborns.
Oh wow, newborns and stuff. Okay, so my question is, what are they gonna do about it? Is it talking about changing? Is it talking about stopping?
Like those marches and parades and stuff. When people start complaining about stuff, things change. And more things are labeled. More people are finding out that salmon and sardines and mackerel and all that are lower mercury fish. You still got to be careful about the plastics in those. And so they say, "Oh shoot." The fish people are going, "Oh shoot." And they're getting all trapped up in the fish nets because of the plastic. So things have to improve, and they are. I'm not saying that people are not taking steps, but it's slower when there's greed involved.
Yeah, but look at where we're going here now, though. I mean, unless they know something we don't know, now they want to make laboratory meat. What I mean, I guess they try to make sense out of it by saying would it cut down on the
carbon emissions?
What is that?
They cut down on the carbon emissions
yeah,
because they're manufacturing meat in a lab.
Yeah.
But you know what? That gets media attention, but it don't make you rush out and go buy it, or me or most people.
Well, how come they just don't put the labels on them? I mean, let people make those choices. You know what I'm trying to say? Okay, this is genetically modified. You know, this is your laboratory substance, whatever how they word it. Why don't they give you the choices?
Bruh, they put it on the label, but people don't read the labels.
That's correct.
That's
they don't
the
read
issue.
The labels anyway.
Yeah.
That's another job of the health coach.
Yeah. Well,
you know those 400 things mean sugar?
Right. Or monosodium glutamate.
That's right. We talked about that. I remember.
Yeah. Or they'll put on the label contains a bioengineered food product. And you look at that and you say, oh, bioengineered. Well, if you know anything about language, bio means life. So you might look at that and say bioengineered. Oh, that's a good thing.
You might see the word engineered and you think, ooh, I like engineers.
Right. Well, when they first started telling us about genetically modified organisms, we thought it was a good thing. Oh, they're going to put genes in the salmon that's going to enable them to do this or do that or to be somehow better for you. So you looked at it as a good thing. But now what we're finding is that these genetically modified fish are actually causing problems along with all the other things that are in the food supply. So that's why I come back to the idea that it's important for us to connect with the right dietitian for us and not someone that's going to suggest, for instance, again, I'm just going by personal experience. Somebody said they needed some lemon juice. Want me to go to the store and buy some real lemon. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's coming in a bottle. And so I went to the store and I got the real lemon juice and I looked at the bottle and I looked at the ingredients and I saw sodium benzoate in there, which I know is a preservative. And I saw some other things, metasulfites. I'm like, oh, it's got sulfites in it. Well, that's not good. And then I'm just thinking about the idea that this juice has been processed in a plant and put in a plastic bottle. And then I'm thinking, well, you know, I could just go to Aldi and get a great big bag of lemons and just squeeze the juice and get straight lemon juice without all that extra stuff in it. So, you know, but it's so easy because they sell us convenience. You know, you get the plastic bag and rip it open and you eating already, you know, as opposed to you standing in the kitchen, slicing the potatoes, dicing the carrots, you know, doing what you got to do to create this meal that you know is real food because when you bought it, it was just that. When I got the onions, they were just onions. When I got the apple, it's just an apple. And, you know, okay, if I got the one with the wax on it, baking soda and some white vinegar, put those bad boys in there, let that wash the fruit, and then I got that stuff off, and now it's a better apple. But if I just went to the store, grabbed it off the shelf, took a bite of it, I'm rolling the dice.
Right.
You know what? Let me say this real quick. You know, and Vince, you might can probably witness this when you went to Africa. Those people, the women that's preparing the food, that's a half of almost all day process. That they are beating the mortar, they doing this, they around there, you know, and see, when you want to deal with spirituality, you know, I think this country and westernization has taken us away from all of this basic foundational stuff, instant stuff you're talking about, Vince, you know, all that stuff right there, because, you know, when you pray, they tell you to pray this, that, and you putting, like you said, the energy or any negative energy you warding off on that. You blessing the food, you thanking the food. And when you have a good spirit and you taking the time and you preparing that food, man. That's spirituality, man. That's, I mean, what you put in this temple, is very important. You know what I mean? And you taking your time with it, and you out there picking whatever it is you picking, and they taking and putting. They might have that's when back in the day in the South, you might have some humming going around and some spiritual hymns going. You putting that energy, that positive energy back into that food and thanking it for being it, and the Creator for giving it to you. That's all sacred. And this man got us in this instant way of doing something and taking that out of everything that we're doing. And we wondering why we're going amok, because we are away from our nature and our natural way of doing things. That's why I preach culture all the time. That's what we're missing. It teaches those rituals and those customs and things like that. Like Vince, they didn't even know why they was doing it, but it was a part of their ritual that was passed down to the people. You know what I mean?
And then the science 50 years ago backed it up. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Right. Well, think about it, Antonio. The sister's got whatever it is that she's using to pound the cassava, right? She's got the bowl down there. She got the cassava in the bowl, and she's doing this, right? That's exercise.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, she might be outside. I remember when I was at Nana Dulqua's house in East Legon a few years back, the sister was outside, not in the driveway, but next to the house. And she was taking care of that cassava so that they could make the fufu, And I'm sure that when Nana is sitting there dipping his fufu in the soup or whatever, he's appreciating the fact that she did all of that, To your point about that connection between the food. And I experienced this myself because I cook for myself and I prepare the meal, and I'm thankful that I have the knowledge and awareness to know how to do this. And then I get to eat the food, and because I seasoned it to my taste, it tastes good. So I'm enjoying it. And I know that it's giving me something because I took the time to get the organic. I took the time to get the right oil for whatever it is, it's and so I'm energizing the food. I'm expressing my gratitude. It's just creating a nice vibe, as opposed to going down the street to the East Side Market and grabbing that, or the new East Side Market, which is about to close, y'all.
Right.
Grab that bag of Doritos off the shelf and snatching it open and eating it, and then looking back and thinking, why did this person sell this to me? What was in their spirit? What was in their spirit? And the spirit was, let me create this addictive substance that will bring this person back to the store day after day after day to eat this that is going to kill them eventually. It may not happen right away, but over a period of time, it's going to happen. It's going to send you to the Cleveland Clinic because your arteries are clogged. And then they can make that diagnosis and say, your arteries are blocked. We need to put in a stent, or we need to do a bypass surgery. And then that cash register starts rolling. See, this is where our own discretion comes into the picture. This is where we take things into our own hands and we utilize the information from experts such as Ms. Mitchell here. And then we improve the quality of our lives because we have a conscious awareness of what we're doing and the holistic aspect of it. Yvonne?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the one thing I absolutely want to add to what you're saying, and you're mentioning it, and I hope you're hearing yourself mention the importance of the community connection. So even if it's two people, okay, you watching them do the cassava, and or all the women are doing this, and all the men are getting that. That is, and look at even the jokes we make about, well, you invited to the barbecue, that's become, okay, you can dance, so you invited to the barbecue. because the social connection makes up for a multitude of sins.
Uh-huh.
Because like you said, the exercise, the spirit, you know, the history, the all the relatives together. That was who we were. And now, like I said, there was a time where grandma couldn't be laying on the floor of her house.
Mm.
Okay.
And that is, I can't begin to tell you how common they say that is now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the isolation that happens because we're so disconnected from
Mhm,
family and so
mhm,
forth and so on. That's one of the reasons that we saw so many departures a few years ago when we were going through what we were going through. So
mhm,
I think essentially what you have done is you've made the case, Yvonne, for community connection, for having that village of support so that
mhm.
everybody's needs are fulfilled and everybody can have a decent quality of life. We have to get back to that
Yeah.
that
Go ahead,
that
Vince. I'm sorry. Mm,
that two people or that three people or that community
mm,
that you mentioned, as we navigate this reality that's being dictated by global situations like what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz right now. They want to charge $21 million a day to let ships pass through, cutting off the supplies of fertilizer and other things to the rest of the world, and so forth and so on. We have all these things happening. We have to have a tribe. We have to have like-minded individuals that we are connected to so that we can manage all the gaps that we need. So we got, a few people who can grow fruits and vegetables. Then you got folks that can the fruits and vegetables so that they're preserved, so that when we up here in Cleveland and the snow is on the ground, we got food that was grown in our area that we can get those regional nutrients from. So we're going to have to, not going to have to, but we should be connected to those kinds of folks in our respective spheres so that we can make sure that our needs are met and we can contribute to each other's situation with the skill sets that we
mhm.
have. Antonio?
Yeah, and this is just to put another footnote asterisk on when I spoke about minerals and how, because we so involved in trying to survive and live and racism and all the rest of the stuff, we don't have the time to really, a lot of us don't really think and look out the box on some stuff. Look around you. How many folks get knee replacements, hip replacements, on broke their foot, disc is going on like that? What you fall, the structural mass, the skeletal mass is falling apart. It's not getting what it needs. So that's just another footnote about the intake of minerals. So obviously, we're not getting it the way they telling us on this balanced diet or what it is now. I remember when one of the brothers from Ridall came on and was talking about it was. I looked it up too, and I think in 1933 or something, somebody approached the Senate floor and saying that our soil is going to be worth nothing. You know, and a lot of people is going to start coming down with all kind of diseases. And I'm like, and he approached the Senate with it and said, look, we got to do something and change the way that we are farming and things of that nature. This was way back in the 30s and 40s, y'all. They knew this was going to happen, but they knew it was all about dollars and cents, so they could come with some pharmaceuticals to help you, get through this and maintain it and siphon dollars off you and things. So that's why, again, we
And
can't.
even if they didn't do that, most people don't know nothing about what was discussed in 1933,
Yeah,
and they're going to make sure that we don't know nothing about.
absolutely, and that's why I was going to end this. That's why it's so ever important, based on the history of that we got to do some research ourselves. We have to. If they
That's
don't
right.
have your best interest, dollars and cents, runs the show.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, there are a lot of lobbyists that meet with our Congress folk and push their agendas through. So they just buy them out, you know, and they get what they want. So if it means eliminating regulations in food processing, or, you know, maintaining certain levels of monitoring of agricultural processes and all of those things, they pay to make sure that those things aren't there, so that they can sell more to us and keep feeding us into a medical system that I call a death care system. You know, I see, I see the buses going up and down Euclid that say health line. I'd be like, no, that's the death line.
Yeah, we just got to do better ourselves, man.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
was just taking a chapter out of Obadile Combone's vernacular.
Yeah, right.
Miss Mitchell, it has been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. We're at 1 o'clock, a little bit after, and I know you have an appointment, so we don't want to keep you away from what.
Guess what time the appointment starts? 1. So
Oh,
I'm already
Yep.
gonna be late. So
All right. Well,
and it's been well worth it for me to
okay.
do that.
Well, we're gonna bring you back. We're gonna get a progress report on your recovery. And I promise we're going to delve into some other things that we didn't get to today, because I definitely want to talk to you about hypnosis. I want to talk to you more about grief recovery and some of the other things. And we've got other opportunities to have these conversations, but I'm looking forward to having you back here at 360 Info Network.
Great. Well, you can see that I'm full of it.
Yes.
In a good way, I think.
In a good way. In a good way. And we appreciate you for that.
Okay,
Brother Lynn, you have anything you want to share before we close out?
No, just hopefully in June I may be working on a lecture coming up, so stay tuned for that, and go to Amazon. The book is on Amazon if you want to peep it out, so you can do that as well.
Okay, well, Brother Lynn, I'm going to buy a copy of your book, and we'll have a conversation about that sometime in the future. How about that?
That sounds good.
Okay, all right. To those of you who have been watching, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and share. It doesn't cost anything, and there's vital information that folks can derive from this broadcast. We appreciate you being with us, and we look forward to you joining us on next Saturday right here on YouTube. The Journey with Hamtonio on YouTube. Also, Vince Robinson. My number is 3193-360 Info Network Facebook page and my Facebook page. So no excuses. And if you get lost, you can go to newstalkcleveland.com. Brother Todd, I hope we addressed your question. It was difficult to read. We can have a conversation if you would like, and perhaps we can revisit the substance of your question. But until then, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day, y'all. Peace.
Peace.
peace. I got my peace ring too.
All right.